The judge hadn't even finished reading the name on the document when my ex-husband's lawyer went pale. Gregory just stared, confused. He thought the hearing was over. He thought he'd won. He didn't realize this wasn't a mistake. This was an audit, and it was going to cost him everything. 10 years. That's how long I had polished the mahogany in that library. 10 years I'd hand-washed the teacups that his mother Lucille sipped from. And in 10 minutes, they were erasing me from the life I had built from nothing. The snow was falling in thick, wet clumps outside, sticking to the wrought iron gates of the Dalton estate like bandages on a wound. It was typical New York weather for late January, unforgiving and gray. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the glacial atmosphere inside that room, where I stood shivering, not from the temperature, but from shock. He didn't even look up from his phone as he said, "It's done, Samantha. Don't make a scene." He was scrolling through something, probably stock prices, or perhaps messages from Brittany, the 2-3-year-old receptionist he had been mentoring for the past 6 months. I stared at him. I was 32. But at that moment, I felt ancient. I had given him 10 years of my life. I had dropped out of art school to support him while he finished his MBA. I had worked double shifts at a diner to pay for his first bespoke suits, so he could look the part of a successful broker long before he actually was one. I had nursed his mother, Lucille, through a hip replacement and a bout of pneumonia that nearly killed the old woman. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Gregory, you can't just tell me to leave. This is my home." From the corner of the room, a sharp voice cut in. Lucille Dalton sat in her high-backed velvet chair, her eyes hard, glittering with a malice she had barely bothered to conceal for the last decade. Her voice dripped with condescension. "It was your home, dear. But let's be honest, you never really fit the furniture, did you? You were a placeholder. A sturdy, reliable placeholder. Until Gregory was ready for the real thing. A placeholder." The word hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen from the room. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his wife. I was a temporary fixture, a tool that had served its purpose. My voice trembled with disbelief. "I'm his wife, Lucille. I scrubbed your floors. I cooked your meals." Gregory finally looked up, his handsome face a mask of bored indifference. "And you were compensated," he said. He slid a check across the antique desk. It slid over the polished wood and stopped at the very edge, teetering. He stated it as a cold fact. $5,000. That's plenty for a fresh start. Consider it severance pay. The prenup is ironclad, Sam. You get what you came in with, which, if I recall, was a suitcase full of rags and a rusted Honda. Tears finally spilled over, hot against my frozen cheeks. I had signed that prenup because I trusted him. He had told me it was just a formality to protect his family's business, that it wouldn't matter because we were partners for life. He gave a dismissive shrug. Business is business. And honestly, Sam, look at you. You're tired. You've let yourself go. Brittany brings an energy to my life that I need. She understands the corporate world. She fits the image of a CEO's wife. You're still just the waitress I met at the diner." Lucille set her cup down with a sharp clink, a sound of finality. Her voice was cold and commanding. "The guards will escort you out in 10 minutes. Take your personal effects. Leave the jewelry. Gregory bought that, so it's family property. Leave the car keys. The lease is in the company name. And for heaven's sake, don't take any of the silverware." The cruelty was breathtaking. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an eviction of my soul. I looked at the check for $5,000. It wouldn't even cover the first and last month's rent. My voice trembled with a rage I didn't know I possessed. "You're throwing me out? In a blizzard? With nothing?" I could hear the sneer in Lucille's voice. "You have legs. Use them." I reached out, my hand hovering over the check. Then, with a sudden surge of dignity, I swatted it off the desk. It fluttered to the floor, landing near Gregory's Italian leather loafers. My voice dropped to a terrifyingly calm register. "I don't want your money, and I don't want your pity. But remember this, Gregory. You built this life on my back. You think you're standing tall, but you're standing on a foundation that I poured. When I leave, I take my luck with me." Gregory let out a harsh, barking laugh, full of contempt. "Oh, spare us the melodrama. Get out, Sam, before I have security drag you." I turned and walked out. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take the expensive coat he had bought me for Christmas. I walked to the coat closet, grabbed my old worn denim jacket, the one I had when I met him, and stepped out the front door. The wind hit me like a physical blow. The snow blinded me. As I walked down the long driveway, The heavy iron gates began to close automatically behind me. I heard the distinct click of the lock engaging. I was alone. No car, no money, no home. Just the biting cold and the echoing laughter of the man I had loved more than life itself. But as I trudged toward the main road, the first signs of hypothermia nipping at my fingers, I wasn't thinking about survival. I was thinking about a phone number. A number I had memorized 20 years ago and promised myself I would never, ever call. My phone was still there, an older model, not worth his time to take. My fingers were stiff, but I dialed. It rang once, twice. A crisp, professional voice answered. The offices of Kensington and Wright. How may I direct your call? My teeth were chattering. Put me through to Harrison. The receptionist was polite but firm. I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Kensington does not take unsolicited calls. If you would like to schedule. I interrupted her. My gaze fixed on the Dalton mansion looming on the hill behind me. My voice was filled with a newfound icy resolve. Tell him his daughter is ready to come in from the cold. For 3 weeks, Gregory Dalton felt invincible. His lawyer, Arthur P. Grimshaw, a man known as the Shark of Manhattan, assured him it was an open and shut case. He spent his days finalizing the merger between his company, Dalton Tech, and a massive conglomerate, and his nights winning and dining Brittany at the city's most exclusive spots. Life was an upgrade in every sense. One evening, at Le Bernardin, Brittany purred. You look tense, babe. Gregory smiled, a self-satisfied smile. Just anticipation. The merger is the biggest deal of my life. If this goes through, I won't just be rich. I'll be wealthy. The shareholders are meeting next week, once the divorce is finalized on Friday. The board loves stability, and getting rid of the dead weight was actually a recommendation from the consultants. Brittany giggled. Dead weight? She really was, wasn't she? I saw a picture of her. So plain. Gregory was dismissive. She served a purpose, but you don't keep the training wheels on when you're ready to ride the Ducati. Any guilt he might have felt was easily washed away by the validation of his mother. She called him daily to congratulate him on reclaiming the family dignity. To them, I was just a temporary employee who had overstayed her contract. Meanwhile, across the city, I was living a very different reality. I was in a small, nondescript guest room in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. It was comfortable, warm, and smelled of old books and lemon polish. Sitting across from me was Henry Cole. He wore a cardigan and looked like a kindly grandfather. But anyone who knew the real history of New York law knew that Henry Cole didn't lose. He didn't argue cases. He dismantled them. He spoke with a gentle, reassuring tone. They've filed for an expedited hearing. Friday at 9 a.m., Judge Patterson is presiding. He's a tough old bird, usually favors the breadwinner. Grimshaw is counting on you not showing up. I stared at the paperwork. They listed irreconcilable differences and failure to contribute to marital assets. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Failure to contribute. I was the one who introduced him to the very investor that saved his company in 2018. Henry's voice was soft. We know, Samantha, but in the eyes of the court, without documentation, that's just hearsay. My own voice was like steel. I don't want support, Henry. I want justice. I want them to understand that they didn't just discard a wife. They discarded the only thing protecting them. Henry smiled, a slow, dangerous curling of his lips. I spoke to your father this morning. He wanted to buy the bank holding Gregory's mortgage and foreclose immediately. I told him to wait. That's too easy, too quick. We have something better. Gregory has been sloppy. Arrogant men usually are. He's been leveraging assets he doesn't fully own to push this merger through. Do you remember who signed the check for the seed money? I closed my eyes. The Artemis Group. Gregory said it was some venture capital firm. Henry nodded. The Artemis Group. A shell company wholly owned by a blind trust. A trust established in 1993. The beneficiary of that trust is you, Samantha. Your father set it up when you ran away. He funneled his money into Gregory's business so you wouldn't starve. Gregory Dalton doesn't own his company, Samantha. In a roundabout way, you do. I sat back, the breath leaving my lungs. His success was literally my inheritance. Does he know? I whispered. No, Henry replied, and neither does Grimshaw. On Friday, we aren't just going to contest the divorce. We're going to audit the marriage. He threw you in the snow like garbage. Henry stood up and offered me a hand. His voice was low and dangerous. Then on Friday, we will bury him in an avalanche. Friday morning arrived. Gregory arrived in a charcoal Armani suit. looking every inch the victor. Lucille was on his arm, draped in furs. He muttered impatiently about me being late. At 9 a.m. sharp, the heavy oak doors swung open. I walked in. I wore a tailored white power suit that cost more than Gregory's car. But it wasn't my appearance that caused the stir. It was the man walking beside me. I saw Grimshaw's jaw drop. He hissed at Gregory. "Is that Henry Cole? He hasn't taken a divorce case in 20 years. Why is he walking with your wife?" I took my seat. Judge Patterson entered, looking bored. "Docket number 44492, Dalton versus Dalton. Let's make this quick." Grimshaw stood, oozing confidence. He painted me as a gold digger and asked for an immediate dissolution based on the prenup. The judge seemed to agree. For a terrifying moment, watching him raise his gavel, it felt like they were going to win. It felt like I had lost all over again. They thought silence was weakness, but they were about to learn that some silences are just the quiet before the storm. Henry stood slowly. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner. "We are not contesting the prenup, Your Honor. We are enforcing it. We have evidence that suggests a significant fraudulent misrepresentation of asset ownership." Grimshaw shouted an objection, but Henry cut through him, asking sharply, "With whose money?" Gregory couldn't help himself. He yelled, "Venture capital, the Artemis Group." Henry smiled. "Exactly, the Artemis Group. Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit A." He handed a file to the judge, then dropped a copy on Grimshaw's table. Grimshaw opened it. His face went from tan to gray to ghost white. Henry's voice was commanding. "Read the name of the sole beneficiary, counselor." Grimshaw swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "Samantha Kensington." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Lucille whispered loudly, horrified. "Kensington? Like the hotel chain?" Henry corrected her. "Like Heiress and Kensington, the industrialist." Gregory looked like he'd been hit by a truck. "What? No. Sam's last name is Hayes." I spoke for the first time, my voice crystal clear. "Her mother's maiden name was Hayes. I used it because I wanted to know if a man could love me for me, not for my father's billions." I got my answer, Gregory. The judge was reading the documents with wide eyes. "Mr. Grimshaw, this document shows the funding was a conditional loan, callable at any time by the beneficiary." Gregory choked on the word. "Callable?" Henry turned to him, explaining his doom. "It means you owe the Artemis Group, and by extension Samantha, $12 million plus interest, immediate payment, or forfeiture of all IP and physical assets. But wait, there's more. Since you evicted the beneficiary from her home, you violated the good faith clause. Your Honor, we move to freeze all assets of Dalton Tech and Gregory Dalton personally pending a forensic audit. We also move to invalidate the upcoming merger." Gregory screamed, his face purple. "I own it. She's just a wife. She's nothing." Henry's voice boomed. "She is the woman who paid for your suits. She is the woman who paid for your office. And she is the woman whose name you just dragged through the mud." Judge Patterson slammed his gavel. "I grant the motion. Assets frozen, immediately." The courtroom erupted. Reporters were frantically typing. Lucille had slumped in her seat. Brittany was already gone. Gregory stood there, shaking. He looked at me, really looked at me, and saw not the waitress but the power. He trembled, begging, "Sam, baby, please, we can talk about this." I stood up, smoothed my white jacket, and looked him dead in the eye. "You're right, Gregory. The prenup is ironclad. You leave with what you came in with." I paused, glancing at his expensive watch. "Actually, I paid for that watch. Take it off." The walk from the courtroom was a funeral procession. A wall of flashbulbs blinded him. He pushed through to his Aston Martin, but the engine sputtered and died. The dashboard lit up. Remote disable. Contact lender. They took a taxi. At Dalton Tech, the security guard, Ralph, stepped out from behind his desk. "Mr. Dalton, wait. Access has been restricted. Your badge has been deactivated." By the time they returned to the mansion, the reality was setting in. The house was quiet. On the kitchen island was a note. Lucille snatched it up. The staff had left due to non-payment, taking the food with them. Lucille stared at the empty refrigerator. They took the truffles. Gregory sank onto a stool. "It's over, Mother. The merger is dead." Just then, his phone rang. It was the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. Gregory tried to call it a little legal hiccup. The CEO's voice was like liquid nitrogen. "Gregory, I just had lunch with Heiress and Kensington. He showed me documents. It seems you didn't write the core algorithm, Gregory. Your wife did. She has a degree in mathematics from MIT. You tried to sell me stolen goods. My lawyers are drafting a suit. The line went dead. Gregory dropped the phone. He whispered, Sam wrote the code. He remembered all those late nights, her looking over his shoulder. He had been taking credit for her genius. Lucille hissed. The little witch played us. Desperate, they went to a broker on 47th Street to sell Lucille's jewelry. The man examined the heavy diamond necklace. I can give you $400 for the gold weight. Lucille gasped. 400? That necklace is a Van Cleef. The broker was flat. It's a replica. All of it paste. Lucille turned slowly to Gregory. He mumbled about cash flow issues. She slapped him hard across the face. You are a failure, and you have dragged me into the gutter with you. Desperate, Gregory went on a tabloid talk show. He cried on camera. I loved Samantha, he said, but she was a spy for her father, stealing my proprietary data. That photo of her in the snow? Staged. I watched the interview. He forgot about the security system. I posted a single video file to a new Twitter account. The caption was 3 words. The truth about winter. It was the 4K footage complete with audio of their cruel words and them laughing as the gates locked me in a blizzard. The internet exploded. Number placeholder trended #1. The show kicked him out. Brittany left him. And then, his mother called, terrified. The police were at the mansion with a warrant for embezzlement. The freeze was no longer about money. It was about freedom. The final courtroom was for complex fraud. The forensic audit revealed everything. $3 million diverted by Lucille, with checks signed by Gregory. The fraudulent patent. The judge looked at me. Miss Kensington, what is your request? I stood. I don't want them to go to jail. I want them to understand what it means to start over. I called in the loan. I took the company. I took the mansion. I took everything. Then, I placed a single envelope on the table in front of Gregory. It's a deed. To the cabin in upstate New York. Your father's. It's run down, but it's paid off. It's a roof over your head. Lucille shrieked. You expect us to live in a shack? I looked at her, my voice cold as ice. No, you are a debtor, and as of today, you are homeless. You have the cabin, and the clothes on your back. And Gregory, he looked up, tears in his eyes. Yes, Sam, I'm keeping the dog. The gavel banged. Case closed. I didn't watch security escort them out. Henry told me Mr. Sterling was on the line, offering 20% more for the company. I told Henry to set the meeting at the Bluebird Diner. I wanted to remind myself where I came from. 5 years passed. The cabin was a nightmare. Lucille passed away during the 3rd winter. Gregory sold the rotting shack and returned to the city. Desperation forced him into a uniform. He became a banquet server. Fate arranged one final meeting. It was the Innovators of the Decade Gala. I was the guest of honor. Gregory was assigned to my table. He kept his head down, terrified. He approached with a bottle of wine. His voice was rough and defeated. More wine, madam? The voice stopped my heart. His hand trembled, and a single drop of red wine splashed onto the white cloth. He began stammering an apology as he looked up and saw me. He saw the gown, the diamonds, the adoring man beside me, my husband, Michael. He saw the life he had thrown away. He braced himself, waiting for the public humiliation. Michael sensed the tension. Darling, you know this man? I looked at the man who had called me a placeholder, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not even satisfaction, just a quiet, hollow pity. I replied calmly. I used to know him, a long time ago. Then, to Gregory, we're fine for wine, thank you. He turned to leave, but I stopped him. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a $100 bill. My voice was soft. For the service. It's a tough job. I know. I used to do it. He took the money and disappeared through the kitchen doors. Out in the alley, he sat on a milk crate as the snow began to fall. He was in the cold again, and this time, the cold was inside him. I, on the other hand, was free. My final act wasn't vengeance. It was pity. But was it mercy? Or was showing him what he'd lost, and then paying him for his service, the coldest revenge of all? What would you have done in her shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining me on After the Silence. If you believe that our quietest moments can lead to our greatest strengths, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, remember, They will always underestimate silence.